We continue with our discussion on leadership. We define leadership as ability to influence to a desired end. Then we call you a leader. And then we are emphasizing that you cannot be a leader if you don't even know where the group should be going. You have no vision for your team. You cannot be a leader. You must have a vision and you must have influence. Unfortunately, some people have vision, but they have no influence. So their team cannot go where it's a very good desired end, but they don't trust him. Therefore, they cannot go with you because they don't believe you. You are not credible. You are not trusted. You have no influence. But some people have influence, but they don't do the homework to study and proactively look at the things that could be done into the future. So therefore, they have no clarity of vision. They move around with a group, nobody knowing better than the other. I think that also will have a problem. But we have also wanted to emphasize that this leadership can be a man or even can be by a woman, so that it can be either of the two. And this particular time, we want to learn lessons from a Bible character called Priscilla. We normally mention them together, Priscilla and Aquila. But we don't want to pick Aquila now, we want to pick Priscilla. She was one of the rare women of the New Testament who is credited to have taught the word, including teaching giants, which is part of that influence thing we are talking about. We read in Acts chapter 18. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. You see, one of the things that the story of Priscilla, Aquila, and Paul teaches us is the role professionalism plays in influencing people. What attracted these two together is not just the fact that they were believers, it's that they had the similarity of vision. Paul was both a theologian and a professional tent maker. And because these other people, this couple are also tent makers, they came together. I want you to understand that your professional life is itself a very good basis for influencing your community. For example, if you're a teacher, the kind of influence you will get on the next generation is untold. And it's because you are but some people want to resign from teaching to become pastors, not understanding that the pastor will not get the kind of influence a teacher has. What about an engineer, a civil engineer making roads in all kinds of places? You find a mountain, next time you find no mountain. And the community is mesmerized by the kind of thing the engineers are able to do. That makes them credible. And because people believe you are clever and you know what you are doing, the leaders of the area want to talk to you. That's an influence. Your profession, your career is giving you an influence you can use for kingdom of God extension and for the good of your community and your country. My friend, I want you to understand that whenever you remember Priscilla and Aquila, remember professionals who use their profession in order to be servants of the Most High God. Professional colleagues are good teammates also in making the kingdom. So the first thing is your profession opens doors for ministry. I've written that in my book, The Christian Professional in the Market, Leading the Marketplace. I've also repeated it in a new book I did during COVID called Leadership, Nehemiah Style. And I'm saying Nehemiah could never have helped to build the wall in Jerusalem if it were not for his profession. What is his profession? A trusted aide of the emperor, the then award emperor. He was the superpower of that time in Persia. And he was the one trusted enough to ensure that you cannot poison the king. He would taste before the king can take. He was a top leader, not a junior leader. Because of that, he had access to the king. Because of his access to the king, due to his job, and the trust the king had on him, the Jerusalem wall was rebuilt and the place reconstructed, both physically, socially, and spiritually. If you want to know the story, you can pick my book, Leadership, Nehemiah Style. And so whenever you are thinking about Priscilla, think of a professional who used her profession in order to make an impact, to influence a community, the community in Corinth. But I think the second thing related with it, which I also don't want you to miss, I'm mentioning, but I don't want to miss, that you can become better teammates. If you're working together, it means you have a lot of time together. And although there is something specific engineers you are doing, you are able to trust each other. You can plan together a team that will do exploits for the kingdom of God. That's why we encourage the idea of prayer meetings within organizations, what we call workplace ministries. Because if you're working together, you understand the place better, you are trusted better, you will be able to influence your workmate with biblical values better than any outsider who would ever try to come to your organization. So why don't you want as workmate? Find out who else is born again in the place where you are a leader. Find out who else, and then call a meeting, a prayer meeting together. Number one, to pray for your organization. Number two, to strategize how you can influence the organization for kingdom purposes, and what you can do that will make you more effective within the organization. You know, non-Christians will meet in bars to plan what's going to happen at the place of work. We, professional Christians, also need to team up together. The way Paul, Aquila, and Priscilla were teaming up together for the sake of conversion of the Corinthians. I think that's something that you need to ask yourself clearly, whether it is something you are doing and how well you are doing it. You know, the name Priscilla is also referred to somebody else who was called Priscilla, who was a famous Roman person adorning a catacomb along the Visa Salaria. If you are a researcher, you are likely to get. But our Priscilla may not be that Priscilla. It was probably named for the wife of the consul Manias, Achillas Galabrio, who was executed in the late 1st century AD after becoming a Christian. So this Priscilla the original Priscilla may not be the one that was killed maybe 100 years later. But you can see it was not a strange name. Though Priscilla is a Jewish, she was a Jew, obviously it then means she cannot have been related to the Roman Priscilla. I don't know. It just tells you that Priscilla isn't somebody famous. She's not the wife of Aquila, but there's nothing else you could say that will make her famous. Are you understanding then? Your pedigree is not a requirement for your future service. That our Priscilla became a woman who brought change in the church in Corinth. And we don't even know her background. We don't even understand her pedigree. I'm also saying, you as a leader, don't get tied up because your parents are known, your grandparents are known, you have had no history. Irrelevant. What matters is about your future, not your past. Your current and your future. Your past cannot determine your future unless you allow it. Your pedigree is not something that will be critical for you if you want to go places. So many leaders are tied up to history, feeling apologetic, they're always accusing themselves, totally insecure, not understanding that God has given you certain gifts. And if those gifts are available and reliable for the task God has given you, don't worry what happened in the past. Don't even worry that others may be more gifted than you. They may be more gifted, but God has not called them in that area. It is you that is there, go there not in self-confidence, but in God confidence that God, who has given you the opportunity, is going to achieve things through you. You know, Priscilla, this lady we are talking about, is a woman of faith. And but her faith had been planted years earlier, not in Corinth, but in a difficult place called Rome, where there was strife and controversy, and Christians were being molested. And that's how she became a Christian. By the time she is coming to Corinth, she is coming to Corinth running away from Rome. The land was a commercial center. Corinth was a commercial center, famous for its appetite for vice. You know, you read both books of Corinthians to understand the kind of people that lived in Corinth. Hardly a place to nurture the faith of any believer. Yet that was where God transplanted this couple from Rome. After Claudius, the emperor, expelled the Jews from Rome in AD 49, tired of their constant fighting about Christus, a probable reference to Jesus Christ. So he threw them out. But do you understand? Their being thrown out is what gave Corinth an opportunity to be established. Because when Paul goes, and Paul was not taking too long in one place, there were people he could leave to look after the church. You know, the growing in controversy in Rome prepared them for the ministry they were to do in Corinth. And you need to understand that God does not waste any one of your experiences. God has taken you through a route of joy and sorrow in order to make you appropriate for the kind of work he's giving you. You know, where God transplants you, I think it will be important to understand he has a reason for it. So, what are you going through? What are the challenges? Why don't you look back to what God has done for you? It will do three things. Number one, it will make you see that you have more than you are trying to accept you have. God has put in you more than you are accepting. When you see the kind of difficulties he has helped you in the past. Number two, you will discover that the God you believe in is omnipresent and timeless. It therefore means if he could have helped you in the past, he can help you yet again. And that will help you in dealing with the current challenges that you are having. Thirdly, the fact that you did not go under will help you to understand whatever the challenges you are going through, you are not going to go under. And that will help you to rise and have the kind of influence that any leader requires for the good of his community. Let's look again at Acts chapter 18, verse 26. In the ESV, we read, he began to speak boldly in the synagogue. This is Paul. But when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him and explained to him the way of God more accurately. Sorry, this is not Paul. This is Apollos. Giant preacher, but who doesn't know enough information. I think it's very important to understand that if you see somebody gifted, he is not competition. Maybe Priscilla and Aquila could have felt, a new man has come. And since he is getting lost, let him be lost. No. This couple were not insecure. They were able to get this guy, train him to become even more famous. You as a leader, does jealousy and insecurity cause you not to help people under you? Not to encourage them? Not to fan into flame the embers that you see in your subordinates? If you want to be a leader that will get your group anywhere, forwards, it will be important that you don't suffer from insecurity. That if God has appointed you to leadership, you should not be afraid of losing that leadership. And even if you lost it, you should have made an impact because the opportunities God has given you. So do not become somebody insecure. Priscilla was not an insecure woman. When she saw somebody who was very gifted, maybe much more gifted than her and her husband, said, no, let's invite him to our house. And they invested in him. And I think that's something that's a very, very important lesson whenever you remember Priscilla, Aquila, and this guy we are calling Apollos, whom the scriptures accept he was a gifted person. Number 2, please understand that mentoring others multiplies your ministry. So you become bigger. With you alone, calling will take a long time to be saturated with the gospel. With somebody else, once he is properly channeled, it will make your work be more effective. But thirdly and importantly, it's important to learn that when somebody is gifted, you can very easily lose him by embarrassing him. Instead of embarrassing him in public, what did they do? They took him secretly at home, would school him at home. By the time he comes back to the church, he knows more. Nobody needs to know that, by the way, he's being taught by Priscilla and Aquila. No, nobody needs to know, except if himself was going to say it. And I think it's important to understand. Mentoring does not mean you keep calling everybody, this is my son, my son. The boy may not want to be called your son. He has benefited from you, that's true. But he feels he doesn't want to be called your son. You will lose this mentee simply by telling everybody, this is my son. This is my son, this is my son. This is not your son. It is true you have contributed, but other people have also contributed. There is a difference. If that son, that mentee, is the one talking about you, if it is Apollo talking greatly about Priscilla and Aquila, it's easier, much better. It will not intimidate him. But if it's Priscilla and Aquila doing it publicly, there will be a problem. And as a leader, it is something you need to learn, that if you are going to mentor people, do not embarrass them in public. It must be, you must mentor diplomatically, where you help them and only them can talk about the help you have given them. You are able to promote them. It's important to keep saying, oh, by the way, so-and-so is very gifted. You can use him. How do you know? I know. Just try him. Don't make it look like it is you. Insecurity is one thing that will mess you up as a leader. Have confidence to be able to help others, to take over from you, who can even go further than you can go for the good of community. Remember, you are a leader, not for your own benefit. You are a leader for the benefit of the community, to the glory of God. If that becomes clear in every leader, that it's not what is innate for me as a leader. It is how will the community benefit? How will my organization benefit? How will my clients benefit? If you thought it about that way, it's for the good of them, then they don't even have to remember you. And to the glory of God, God will always know you and acknowledge you. And that's what matters. You know, in verse 18, Acts 18, verse 18, we are reading, after this, Paul stayed many days longer and then took leave of the brothers and set sail for Syria, and with him Priscilla and Aquila. Can you see it was useful that that Apollos had been available, because Paul finally realized this team can go to other places. At Sanctuary, he had cut his hair, for he was under a vow. That's Paul. In other words, Paul wants to go continuously right up to Rome, where he could fulfill his vow. What are we learning? That do not assume you'll be in a place forever. Maybe that's what Priscilla and Aquila knew when they were investing themselves in Apollos. Number 2, if you are a leader like Paul, learn the value of women, the value of others. And he knew there's a ministry the couple could take. But thirdly, please see that clearly this couple were able to handle men, bachelors. And I think it's very important to understand the unmarried Paul could team up with a couple. Our homes should be opened so that single men, single women could become tutored, mentored for God's glory. Of course, in the case of Paul, he was the mentor to this couple. But I think it's important to understand that this is important. Why can't you as a couple learn to accept a single person and mentor them so that they can do things? There are many things, because you are tied up with your children, you might not achieve. But if you invested in a single person, it could be done. And I think that will be important. I think the other thing we noticed, Paul stayed many days in Corinth. But staying many days did not mean he was going to be permanent there. I think it's important to understand he required other people who could continue in the church. You know, women such as Priscilla were important in the early spread of Christianity. Let's come out very clear. Christianity was not just spread by men. Women played a role, and Priscilla is an example. Of course, Priscilla is never mentioned apart from her husband Aquila in the scriptures. In Christian marriage, ideally men and women are equal as persons, but of different in function. You know, it's important to understand that entering leadership as a woman does not mean you stop being a wife. Leadership should not make you a lesser wife. You are a leader out there, not a leader a boss to your husband. And many women are unable to do that. To be a wife at home and a big man out there. To be a queen of United Kingdom, yet you can make tea for your husband, who may not even have a major title. I think it's important to understand women in leadership must not dump marriage. They must, of necessity, learn how to lead out there and come home to be the wife. When I say a wife, it doesn't mean she is a kitchen person only, but there are things they are doing together with the husband. And the husband remains the leader at home. Who is saying that? That's what the Bible says. The husband is to be the leader of the family. And you can do that. So as a woman, do not mess up your marriage and claim it's because you are a leader. It's because you are not very wise in having to understand this. And you know, we are different things to different people. In one place, we may be a subordinate. In another place, we are a leader. Learn to act appropriately in each situation you happen to be in. But for now, don't allow your leadership to affect your being a wife. Be a good wife, a successful wife, a good mother and father, or rather, a good mother of your children, despite the places you are going, just like Priscilla. Priscilla and Aquila welcome Paul into their hearts, not just their home, to live with them and work with them as they made tents together. You know, in the process, Paul established them in the doctrines of the faith, and they in turn taught others, such as Apollos. Priscilla was an intelligent woman. But I think in addition to that, he was hospitable, like I said earlier. But she was also articulate enough to be able to train Apollos. Her use of her gifts to nurture the church in its infancy is an inspiration to any woman or any man today. What do we read in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 19? The churches in the province of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Priscilla greet you warmly in the Lord. And so does the church that meets at their house. In other words, after they moved from Corinth, they established another church. If somebody was to become an apostle, going planting churches everywhere they went. That's what Priscilla and Aquila did, to go and plant churches. Could you be such a couple where your wife is fully involved in ministry and therefore you are able to do far much more than if it was left? Have you heard of pastors who say he is the one called, the wife doesn't want to get involved at all in the ministry? I think it will be a very unfortunate thing. Or the woman is the one called, the husband does not want to get involved. This couple teaches us you can be involved together. Where possible, husband and wife should serve as a team. It will be much more effective and much more influence will be born if you work together as a team. And I think that's That's something that we need to think about very, very clearly. Are we working together? Or do you abandon your family in order to be an achiever? I think that will be something important. You know, leadership involves taking risks for the team. You know, the character of this Priscilla missionary is a risk taker. She moved from place to place. We have heard of her in Rome, in Corinth, in Asia. She's moving to new places with all kinds of risk taking. Priscilla was a woman whose spiritual maturity and understanding of the faith helped build up the early church. Romans 16, verse 3 and 4 says, "Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus." That's what Paul is describing them. They risked their lives for me, Paul is saying. Not only I, but all the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. They are risk takers. If you want to be a leader, you must be willing to take risks, because some of the things God will expect you to do are going to cause you to take a risk. You know, you should expect opposition both because of the gospel you are preaching, but also because of your tribe, but sometimes because of your gender. This couple, being Jews, suffered because of it. Priscilla suffered because she was of the gospel. She suffered because she was a Jew. She also suffered because she's a woman. But she had joy in taking the risk in order to achieve the thing God wanted. You know, it will be important to acknowledge those who have had impact on you. That makes you even more committed to the team call. Now, you know, when Paul is saying, "Greet Priscilla and Aquila, who took a risk for me," my friend, that acknowledgement, many leaders do not want to acknowledge a lesser being. They want to imply, you know, I'm self-made. I was at top of the team. As a leader, learn to acknowledge other people's inputs in your life. I am not encouraging them to go claiming they are the ones who made you. But you, who knows the truth, acknowledge others. That will make you even a bigger leader. You know, Paul was a traveling evangelist, but Priscilla were disciples. They would sit with people until those people knew the message well. And that's why they were needed in Ephesus, needed in Corinth. That's why they were needed in several places. You need to be able to identify, are you called in outreach or discipleship? Because both will be important things that you need to deal with. You know, Priscilla must have been a spiritual, mature woman. Her name actually precedes Aquila in 4 out of the 6 times. Instead of saying Aquila and Priscilla, they say Priscilla and Aquila. And knowing the usual way of writing the New Testament, where you started with Silas and Paul, then later you go to Paul and Silas, the name that's been given first is the one with the prominence. That means this team of Aquila and Priscilla, Priscilla was, in terms of out there, was more gifted. Whatever the case, Priscilla's role in instructing Apollos and leading the early church is recognized. Rather than withering in the soil of controversy, Priscilla's faith seemed to flourish. A woman can lead a ministry and yet be subject to her husband. I think that's what we said a little earlier. You know, we need also to understand that this couple was willing to allow Apollo, like I said earlier, to go places. Less prominent roles can be even more impactful. As they went from church to church, mentoring people, those people go places. So why don't you agree to do something that's not prominent, as long as you know it is achieving kingdom values? As we finish this, do you see this woman Priscilla will be a challenge in 3 ways? She's a challenge of anybody who is a professional, but is not at the same time wanting to serve the Lord. You can be a tent maker who is actually making kingdom inroads. Number 2, you are a woman who is looking down on yourself and therefore not having an influence, even among the people you are working with. Again, Priscilla is going to challenge you. Or you're a woman who is messing up your marriage because God has given you leadership role. Priscilla will be your challenge. Thank you very much.